I've had quite a few guests on the show who are natural-born entrepreneurs. Those guys who built an empire selling candy on the playground, or grew up being taught by parents who were successful business owners themselves. Well, for the first half of his career, today's guest went a pretty traditional route. He graduated from college, he worked in his industry, and was very good at it. In his 40s, he decided to change gears. So he started his business. I think there are a lot of people out there who are maybe in this situation. Those who have been working the same job or in the same industry for 10 or 20 years. And the thought of continuing to do that same thing for another 20 years makes your head spin or doesn't get you excited. But at the same time, you feel a little trapped because you're good at it. You've been doing it a long time. You're making good money. Whatever the case, you feel secure and you feel safe and you feel comfortable. Maybe it's time to consider your alternatives. Well, wherever you may be, today's podcast is a great story and there is so much to learn from it. Welcome to the Socks and Soul Podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Ditto. Let's go. My guest today is the president and founder of Love in-Home Senior Care and has a decorated past in healthcare and healthcare sales and pharmaceutical sales. And he's done great things in his career. I'm glad to welcome in my studio today, Andy Niska.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's good to be here.
You're kind of one of my heroes. I don't know if you know that.
I do not know that. I'm nobody. I'm only my child's hero, but I'll take you. You graduated from Eastern Washington University here in Eastern Washington, and then went straight into the healthcare field, into management, and then you did pharmaceutical and medical sales for a long time, a lot of training, president's clubs, growing territories, and then you started a company. Exactly. It's wild.
And I love these kinds of stories. I find them really inspiring. And from the first time I met you, probably, 5-6 years ago, I've always been really impressed by what you have built here, pretty much out of scratch. So I thought I'd ask you right out of the gate, what is your business philosophy? What is the Andy Niska, kind of thesis on business and business success?
Well, I want to answer that question, but can I talk a little bit about
Please do.
My history?
Yeah.
Because it kind of does play into the philosophy.
Sure.
And so I feel like when you look at entrepreneurs, there's often this type that they knew they wanted to have a business early on, and they did things. They were such a good, paper route boy, and
they were selling candy at recess.
Yeah,
and
all that stuff. And that's not my story. I'm really kind of plain Jane, vanilla wrapped, home baked bread. I went out and got a degree, and I figured that was going to be the best way. My parents wanted me to do it. It just seemed like it was the right thing to do. I got my degree, and it took me right into my career, which was great. The education played into the healthcare industry.
And your degree is in healthcare administration, correct?
Healthcare administration.
So at what point were you, how did you get there?
Well, I went to college with the big eyes that wouldn't it be neat to be a professional of some sort, like a physician, like a dentist. And so I went into the pre-med world. I was at Brigham Young University. That's where I started.
That's my alma mater.
It's a good school.
It's a great school.
I have children there right now. I found out real quickly in my chemistry classes that I just wasn't measuring up as well as I thought I needed to, and I just lost that vision and hope when I was toiled with the education process.
Did you not enjoy it, or were you not good at it, or
wasn't very good at it? And I just kind of thought like, wow, I'm just getting started with this, and it's going to be a long haul. And
I got 8 more years of this. I don't know.
And it just didn't seem like it was going to work out. So I actually thought, well, maybe physical therapy is what I need to do. And I went and volunteered at a PT clinic there in
Provo Canyon, well, just at the mouth of the canyon, there was a PT clinic that I worked at I did a lot of hours. Like they wanted 1,000 hours to get into the program, and I had like 500 hours there, and then I got hours here in Spokane when I was home at Rockwood Clinic, and then I realized, you know what, I don't really care much for PT. There's a lot of rinse and repeat and do the same thing, and it just didn't really, there's always this kind of glory of PT that would be sports medicine, and you're going to help some athlete becomes uber
You're
strong.
down on the sidelines at the 49ers games working on guys.
Exactly. Yeah.
But really, it's just 10 hours a day of helping people stretch their Achilles.
Right. Yep. So I kind of lost that vision, and I went to one of the counselors at the school, and I said, look, I've got a couple years now, and I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this because I don't think I'm going the way I wanted to go. And an inspired counselor said, well, have you thought about healthcare administration? And I'm like, I don't even know what you just said. I don't know what you're talking about.
Those words, but I don't know what they mean in succession.
Yeah. He said, well, you like healthcare because I had loved my anatomy and physiology, had a fantastic professor at BYU, loved it and did well in those classes. But as I got a little deeper, mainly in the chemistry and physics, it just wasn't working very well for me.
Sure.
And so he said, well, what do you think about business in the healthcare industry? Since you've kind of walked down this path a little ways and you do have some, enjoyment out of it, then what about the business side of it? So I said, well, tell me more. And then that's when I transitioned into the School of Business and finished a healthcare administration degree at Eastern.
I would just like to put a plug to every kid out there on his way to college, because this is exactly how I got my degree. I went to a counselor and I said, this is what I like. And he nailed it right out of the gate. And so, kudos to the counselors, the career counselors, at universities and colleges. Kids, go talk to them, because they will help you understand what you enjoy and what you should stay away from. But thank goodness for internships, huh?
Exactly. Well, and that's, in my senior year at Eastern, I'm in the healthcare administration degree. I'm serving as the president of the American College of Healthcare Executives chapter at Eastern Washington University.
Nice.
And so I'm getting a little access into the hospital administration world of Spokane, and that's been good.
So at that point, you were thinking, I'm going to go be the president of a hospital or something like that?
Sure.
Was that kind of
that's kind of like
what you had in your mind?
That's the golden kind of ring of healthcare administration is you'll be the CEO of some big hospital.
Yeah, sure.
And there's kind of different routes you can go with that. Well, I did an internship at Group Health Cooperative, and which is an HMO in the Washington area. Mm-hmm. It's been bought out by Kaiser today, so it doesn't exist anymore. But that led to a job. Even before I graduated, they had hired me on, and so I've been healthcare ever since. And I managed clinics for a while, and got actually I could see the top end of my progression, my ladder within group health in the clinic management world, and I just didn't like what the outcomes looked like, what the pay was going to be, and even the job responsibilities. They were
was it too monotonous? Or
yeah, like I was excited the first week of the month because I had reports and different things to do, but then I had a couple months or a couple weeks of just toiling, showing up 9 to 5 or 8 to 5.
So how many years into doing this did you start coming to this realization?
Oh, it was about 3 years in.
Okay, so
about
pretty
3
quick.
years in, and so I was assistant manager of a clinic, and I actually saw the drug reps coming in, and I thought, look at these guys, they're all dressed nice, and they bring in food, and they talk with the physicians and the nurses, and I just thought, I wonder what is that career like, and so. I had access to them. They'd come into my office, and I started talking with them and thought, this does look like something I might want to do. Funny thing is, I told my wife, I'm like, I'm thinking about being a pharmaceutical rep. And she doesn't have the best opinion of me. So she's like, you can't sell. What are you thinking? You won't make it in that career. Not in a bad way, but she's just like, are you sure this is what you want to do?
You want to go into sales?
You want to go into sales? That doesn't
You spent all this time doing this, and now you want to go into pharmaceutical sales?
Exactly. And so she was like, I really don't know about this. And well, it took a long time. Like I interviewed for 6 months before not interviewed, but I pursued it and had a few interviews, and it took a couple before finally I sprung a job, and that was in the late 90s. That was in like 97.
Okay.
1997.
So did your wife eventually, I mean, was she eventually like, okay, this makes sense? Or were you like...
Once you saw the paychecks and she was supportive, but she just thought, is this really, this doesn't seem like you.
You're not really the salesman type. Yeah.
And pharma sales is not like selling a car or a used car lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's totally different. It's presenting information, clinical information for a physician to make a decision on.
Yep.
And that's, it's building relationships. That's the core
and it's
of
a service business.
Yeah.
I mean, sales is all about service, all about providing the right information to the right people, and then being a resource to them.
Yeah. Providing solutions to their needs.
Absolutely.
And got to uncover their needs, and then you create the solutions that you offer.
And then you did this for a long time.
I did.
And we're
I had
good at
16
it.
years. Had a long career. And I saw, and I enjoyed it. And I actually knew that I could predict my date of retirement and the amount of money I'd have, and everything was just kind of in a nice, well-packaged career. You could just see, and if I wanted to make more money, I could consider the steps of management and things like that, but I didn't really want to because of the travel.
There's great freedom in your schedule, and then you kind of control what you make, and there's great perks, if you're good at it at the high level.
Yep.
And these things are very, very attractive, in these kind of high-end sales fields, and being good at it,
It was, and I do not knock the career, and I felt like I drank the Kool-Aid at times, of the career. Which you do no matter where you work for, but the Kool-Aid was that, the cost of these drugs is merited because of these reasons, and and I would try to tell my elderly friends that drugs cost a lot, and this is the reason why. I have a different, I don't drink the Kool-Aid as much as I did, at this point, but so here's where I get to my philosophy.
Yeah.
This is where my history kind of leads to that.
And this
question.
is the part of your story that I'm really the most interested in, is how did you go from that, making really good money, making your own schedule, having that kind of freedom, to what you're doing now?
Well, so there is a thing called midlife crisis that we all can face, right? And that's where my story comes in the entrepreneurial side of things. And I think there are a lot of people out there like this. There are those individuals that were born with that entrepreneurial spirit, and they know it, and they know that they don't want to waste time in their life getting the things they want, either their dreams or building a business or possessions that they want.
I interviewed Jeremy McGee, who owns Zero Res, and on his second day of college, he called his dad, who was a doctor, and said, I don't want to go to college. I mean, he's the kind of kid. He is your quintessential, I was born to be an entrepreneur kind of kid. But most people are not wired that way,
No, I and that's what I'm going to say. I think my story may appeal to some people that are in their 40s, like I was, late 40s for me, and is just going, is this what my life is going to amount to? Because you can kind of like feel it now.
Yeah.
You're that late in your career, and it's been a good career. It's not to knock what you're doing. And all of a sudden, I've even talked with I had a physician call me a couple of years ago who he worked in a career. I mean, I have to be careful how much I share because I don't want, confidentiality to come out. But, he worked in this career that here in Spokane that we all know that Multicare came in and bought Rockwood and became this, this big player in provider groups, and he's in this huge provider group now. And he was saying to me, he goes, Andy, I spent my whole education to get to this point, and I've been doing this for a number of years, and now I feel like I have no control over my future, and even simple things like my vacation. He says, I have to put in requests for vacation, and it kills me. So my son's returning from a mission in Peru, and I want to fly down there and spend time with him. And I'm not sure if I'm going to have time off because I'm in this big provider group. And it's just not what I envisioned as a physician.
Here I am at the top of my career, and I got to put 6 months to a year in advance if I want to take a weekend and go skiing with my family or whatever.
Yeah. And so he came to me, he goes, Andy, I watched what you've done, and I'm wondering if I don't want to be a physician anymore. I mean, maybe I want to open up a home care agency. So we had breakfast and we talked all about that industry, and that was his plight. So my plight that I faced in my late 40s was, is this what I want to do the rest of my life? And is it secure enough in just things of like happiness and fulfillment and purpose, irregardless of the pay and the benefits and all that? And so that was kind of my plight towards entrepreneurism.
So that's always that's the question that I feel from a lot of people, right? I talked to a friend recently who is kind of right in your position. He's one of the best in his field, or very good at it, and he has this option of going and working for another company and continuing to do the same thing that he's been doing, or going off and kind of starting his own business and going that route. And and the things that hold you up are, I have created this lifestyle. I'm accustomed to making this much money. I have this house and these things, and my kids are getting older. And do I want to take the risk of leaving all of that security, if you will, and going out on my own? And that's that. I mean,
exactly.
How do you decide to do that? And what was your wife thinking, and how did you get over those hurdles, and how did you sleep during these, during that time?
Well, what I'll say that my case is, and I actually will say that I've heard this from others too, because I do some consulting. I have this whole legacy of friends in the pharma world that are in the same boat that I was. At some point, they possibly can be in that position, and so I'll get a call from a friend in California that says, "Hey, how's this working out for you? Now you left.
How'd you get out?"
Yeah. and so all of a sudden, he's like, "I want to do what you're doing because your career, my career, our career is good for running a healthcare type business, especially when it comes to marketing, which is the failure of a lot of new businesses, is how do you go out and get the new client?"
Yep.
And if that was our old career, it works well for getting a business going. You can figure out the management and all that stuff. If you're bad at it, you can hire people to be good at it.
Yeah.
But to get people interested in your business and what your service is, takes a level of sales and marketing skills, and that's what you've been doing your whole life. So there are people out there, you've run into them, you just mentioned, and I run into them, and I consult those individuals, often coming from pharma, that want to do something different. And I'll help them learn how to open up a home care agency. They don't need to go to franchise to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be their franchise. I don't want to be their mentor for years and years when they only need often a year or two of good mentoring to pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely. So you obviously you stayed in healthcare, which makes a ton of sense because that's what your education, that's what your experience was so far in your career. But why senior care? Why in-home care? What spawned that idea, and how were you able to put together the pieces to kind of move forward with that?
Well, so my case was, first I'll just say there was a realization that I wanted something more fulfilling out of my career.
So sorry. I'm super interested in this part. So, I mean, the thesis of what it came down to was you wanted something more purposeful to do for the rest of your career. You were looking down and saying to yourself, I've got 20 more years to work. I don't want to be doing this anymore. I want something that means more, or I
want something that is more fulfilling, that seems like there's more to what I'm offering, really to my community.
Yeah. Okay.
Than what I had been doing.
Yeah.
And I will say security. And this is probably not unique to the pharma industry, but I watched in the pharma industry, every fourth quarter, there was right sizing, there was downsizing, there was these situations where it didn't matter how you performed or what your legacy was, there was a chance that there was going to be changes in the business. And so I felt like that wasn't very secure.
Yeah.
And even today, I got a text yesterday from a good friend who's been in the pharma industry. I encouraged him to get into it when he was young, when he was a young adult, and he did, and he's had a successful career. Well, he found out yesterday that he's keeping his job, but they still laid off 8% of the sales force.
Yeah.
He just had to wait. He knew about it for months, and he found out yesterday that he still has a job, but now he wants to leave it.
It really changes your tone about job security,
Yeah.
when you're wondering if you're going to have a job on January 1st or December 1st or whatever the date is. How much did money play into it? Income?
Well, I'll say that I felt like I wanted to make more money than I did as a pharma rep.
For sure.
There's a cap to that at some point. Sometimes your bonuses are capped. Your salary is what it is, and so I felt like there could be more that I could earn, depending on the situation, and so that's a part of the equation.
Yeah.
Security was a big part of it at this time. And I can give you this history. You probably don't know this, Kelly. I don't know if I told you this, but I was working for a company. I'd been there for 9 years, and it was a little company, and it was one of these biotech firms. And it did very well for its size, very profitable. Just had a few treatments that we had in some unique kind of disease states. And our CEO had always been fighting off the mergers and the acquisitions and the hostile type bids.
His business was primed to be taken over by somebody.
Pfizer, by anybody big, and so he was really good because he just, he told the board, we won't sell for anything under this type of a share. And if the right offer came in, obviously he would have, but never did that happen. Well, he got cancer, and in less than a year of him passing away, a hostile takeover happened with the company that I was with, and a big, huge company based out of Israel that is big in generics as well as branded drugs. Not very big in branded, huge in generics. They wanted to get bigger in branded. We were a branded, focused company. And so they came in and did a hostile takeover. And I lost my job here in Spokane. They're like, we don't need anybody in Spokane. But it was really a sweet deal. I had a full year's severance.
Okay.
Free benefits, meaning I did not pay any premiums for my health care for that year.
Okay.
And the package included a discounted, the company car I'd had it for a year. They said that you can buy it for really cheap.
Yeah.
Because and it was our company that I worked for trying to say, if this hostile bid comes in and buys this company, we're going to fight tooth and nail for anybody that's going to lose their job. And they basically were going to just take half of our company and throw it away. They didn't need it.
Right.
There's a lot of duplication they just were going to get rid of.
They just wanted the brand
They
drug,
wanted the
basically.
products,
Yeah.
And so they didn't need anybody in Spokane. And so I had a job within 3 weeks at a different place.
Sure.
But I had that severance.
Yeah.
And then I worked that job, the second job, I worked that for a year and a half, and I was really dissatisfied with that job. But I also had the benefit of, 2 paychecks coming in that year.
Yeah.
So my willingness to now start to think about, do I really want to continue this was easier
Yeah.
based upon my situation.
You had a little security blanket.
Yeah,
that
I
was
did.
just kind of rolled out.
I did. But it still took me a year and a half before I said, am I really going to do this? And so I actually studied looking at, I'm not going to leave to go to another pharma job. I'm not going to leave to go to another medical sales career type job.
So this was your third pharmaceutical company or sales job that you'd worked for?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So my first was with Zeneca, it merged with another company, and it became AstraZeneca. And at the time, it was the largest pharma company in the early 2000s. And then I went to the smaller company, the biotech firm called Cephalon. And then it was overtaken by Teva, which is an Israeli pharma company. Nonetheless, that's a good 16 years of sales there. And then I went to a lab company at the end.
Okay.
That year and a half, which was quite a bit different. It's kind of wild west of sales. So it had some fun aspects to it, but anyway, I just knew that it's time. It was time for me to really pursue this option. So the question that I haven't answered that you asked regarding how did I find healthcare or how did I find senior care?
Yeah. How did you hone in on that specifically?
Well, so I had a friend that was in the pharma industry that left. He was in Tacoma, and I was traveling to Seattle, Tacoma area, and luckily he was opening a home care agency. So I got to go and spend some time with him, and I would schedule trips over to Seattle and call on the docs that I had over there, and then spend a half day with him, and he would show me his sales calls on the social workers, on the hospitals and the skilled nursing facilities. And I'm like, wow, this is really easy compared to what I'm doing now. These people love you, and compared to trying to call on a physician. And so, I thought, well, I could do this.
So that's where the referrals come from in your business?
Yeah.
It's from the nurses and I guess the people taking care of the,
So typically it's one term we use is discharge planners.
Okay.
Or social workers.
Yeah, sure.
So there are individuals that go into a skilled care setting, hospital, nursing home, or a rehab facility like St. Luke's.
Sure, yeah.
And then they need to discharge out at some point because they plateaued in the recovery. It's just really time for them to go home.
Yep.
Insurance stops paying for that service that they were receiving. And then the question is, what is their capacity to live independently at home? And we're speaking of the elderly primarily. And so that's how, if we build relationships with these individuals that are helping them discharge out, then they can discharge out into our care. So
yeah, sure. Makes total sense.
So anyhow, I got that insight into the industry through a friend who actually served as the vice president of the American College of Healthcare Executives with me, the chapter at Eastern that we had formed. And we had parallel careers. He went to work for Pfizer eventually after doing some clinical management stuff, and then he lost his job. But he said he had a severance, but he said at that time he's not going to go back into pharma. And he sat down with a business broker. And the business broker was like, well, do you want to open a yogurt stand or do you want to do this? There's different things like that, which I did some similar stuff myself. And
you opened them or you talked about opening them?
I talked with the business broker, talked with different people.
Okay.
And anyway, through that process, he remembered that there was some friends he had down in California that were also in the pharma industry that went into home care a couple years earlier. And they were forming a franchise, and he became their first franchisee.
Okay.
And so anyhow, I had a little bit of a shoe in by connecting with this fellow.
Yeah.
And
kind of a mentor, to help you get the balls kind of figured out and rolling.
Right. Had a little bit of a feel for it.
Yeah.
Wasn't just totally in the dark
right.
on the industry. Then I did a long research of the aging population, the baby boomers. So I learned about the baby boomers, this thing called the silver tsunami, and just the trends. And it's the fastest growing segment of our population, even still is today.
Oh, yeah.
And it will be for a number of years.
Sure.
And any industry that was going to affect that population was going to have a market of people that need services and goods and most of them have some discretionary income.
Sure.
And so it made sense. And from a evaluation of the market. So anyhow, all those things kind of kept giving me reinforcement that maybe this could work. Maybe this is something I could do. And you asked a question about my wife. And so there was a point where my wife had to be on board, right?
Oh,
because I was going to walk away from a paycheck.
That's right.
And open a business.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did this together. We did a lot of soul searching and consideration of it. I have a friend that I went to high school with who he's my financial advisor. He's been taking care of my accounts for quite a while, a number of years, and he's very well trusted. He's in Colorado. My wife trusts him, which is fantastic for someone that's controlling your monies.
Absolutely.
And so he came to town when I was in the middle of this kind of evaluation, and he stayed with us. Him and his wife did, and his son for a day or two. And with his kind of financial eye, we sat down and talked with my wife and came up with a way that we would fund the startup of the business. And she just felt very secure after that time, especially because of him and his influence and his position and the plans that I had been laying down since then, since I started having this interest. And so those things made my wife feel like, okay, this is maybe something that we could actually do.
We're not selling the house and living on a sailboat or something crazy like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, there was certainly that realization it could happen. And I'll tell you this, and this comes from a spiritual standpoint. My wife and I prayed at some point.
Yeah.
And we did that, together as well as independently, and woke up the next morning and we looked at each other and we both together realized that this was okay. This was something we could do. There was peace. And that if we made this decision, that it was right.
What did you ask God in that prayer? Like, what were you saying? We want to do this. Can you confirm that that's okay? Or
Yeah, pretty much that's what it was. It's like, we think that this seems right for us, and we're just seeking that confirmation that it's okay. And my wife she'll tell the story that it's not like she felt like this means we're going to be successful.
Right.
It just meant that the Lord was behind us. There would be lessons we could gain and things that could happen that, irregardless of the measurement of success, it was right. It was the right thing to do for us at that time.
Yeah.
When we had that, it was 100% at that point. That next day, it was...
You pushed all your chips in.
Yeah.
And you were like, pull the strings, drop the lever,
Everything.
whatever it
Yeah.
is, we're out of here. We're doing this.
It was. It was a great experience to go through and actually to fall back on.
Yeah.
Because a couple years into it, I was uncertain. I was like... And I always knew I could go back into pharma. I always felt like I could go back into pharma. But I didn't want to, obviously.
Right.
And so anyway, there was a point. It was a year and a half into this, and I had a 20 caregivers, 25 caregivers, and maybe I had 30 or so, and we were providing care for about 40 people, and I had one person in my office, and her and I were doing everything, and managing the schedule, and I still wasn't making enough money. At this point, I have 3 kids in college. I mean,
you're hemorrhaging money.
Yeah, it's just
daughters are getting married.
Right. It was not a perfect timing, but I felt like it was right, and I was glad, that I did it all. But there was a point where it was over a year, and we're not replacing the income I walked away from, and our budget as a family. It's $100,000 a year budget. There's no way we could cut it less. It's just what it was.
Yeah.
And at least that, so anyway, I remember a point where I went to my wife. It's about a year and a half, 2 years in, and I'm going, and I tell her, like, I'm not sure if I need to get a job, like a secondary job, just so we have income.
Right.
Because the business is growing, it's just growing slow.
Right. We'll get there. It's just going to take some time.
It's going to take some time, and I just really feel a lot of stress. I'm not sleeping at night, and this is difficult. And she goes, Andy, after we prayed, I knew that it was going to be all right. And so if we have to sell the house and move into an apartment, I'm totally fine with it. I know we're doing what we should be doing.
Oh my gosh.
She said that. And when she said that, I'm like, I know I can do this. I know that it's all going to work out, and I don't have to be as stressed as I was. And literally, there was a lot of sleepless nights. And
you must have been blown away at that response.
it was fantastic. It's what I needed to hear.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
She's like, no. He told us that this was going to be okay.
Yeah.
He never said it'd be easy, but he said, this is okay. You're going to work out. That is fantastic.
And I can almost mark it to that day, that conversation and her response, that it just, things start flowing better. And with any business, especially a business that requires referrals, it's not like I can just blast out radio and TV ads and expect that I'm going to hit people. It'd be a waste of money.
Yeah.
there's a real direct kind of referral source I can go to. But that referral source has to build a level of trust. They have to see you. You have to be there frequently enough and for a period of time. And
there's consistency associated with that referral wagon. Yeah, that makes total sense.
So a year and a half into it, all of a sudden referrals are starting to flow now. And we haven't looked back. I mean, it just grows. This year we're going to be, it's COVID year. We'll have the biggest year we've ever had, and it just keeps growing.
How many employees are you up to now?
We're at 100 employees.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And I say 100 because it fluctuates a little bit here and there, and we're hiring all the time.
Yeah,
it's just trying to get them trained, try to get the right people, and we, our majority of our employees are caregivers,
right?
Certified nurse assistants.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got 5 people in the office, and then the rest is care providers.
It's just not only an amazing story, but a really inspiring story, because I sometimes talk to business owners who, they really gloss over that part of the journey, and where it was like, I mean, I remember my first commission sales job. And I was a month or 2 into it. And I had left a good job, a salaried position and a car and a phone. And, they really took good care of me. And I was doing this job. And I remember the day that it almost broke me. I woke up that morning. I went out to the curb. My car had a flat tire. I didn't have the right tools to replace the tire. We were living in my mom's basement at the time because we were transitioning into, our house because we'd moved. And so I had to take the minivan to work that day and leave my wife and our 3 little kids, without a car. And I was just getting my head kicked in all day long. And I remember, and the culmination of that was I was sitting at a stoplight, a traffic light, and the transmission in the van went out. And I pulled over and I bawled. I was just bawling because I was like, I thought I was ready for this. I thought I knew what was going on. I felt the confirmation. I prayed about it. Annie and I had prayed about it. And I just got hit in the head with a sledgehammer, Wow. And like you said, that was the day. That was the day that it took off. It was almost like I had to totally invest without looking back in this thing, to believe it would work out. And from that day forth, it was a steady uphill climb. Not that there weren't hard days, but it's I love that part of your story, that you had come to this point where you were like, okay, well, maybe it's time to go a different way, because as the father and provider in my home, I feel this very solemn responsibility to take care of, this family, and your wife came through.
Well, I think that I think there's a valley of despair that's a part of the success cycle.
Yeah.
And that's not something I made up. I don't want to claim that that's my stuff. I've read that and been in a presentation possibly that someone highlighted that. So nonetheless, that there is just, when you start out on something, you're excited. Everything's great, and it's funny because you talk about commission sales and you talk about these sales types careers where you have to get like uber excited and amped up to go out and face the battles daily. And so a company has to provide that, or you got to figure out how to get it yourself. And so there is, there's drive because you have all this optimism about how it's going to work out and how it's going to look and it's going to be great. And it helps you when you start facing the roadblocks that you're going to face. They're going to hit you. And then, but you're going to start to wane. You can't run into a brick wall so many times and not get through it. And so, and so then there's going to eventually be maybe this really isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe this, there's that
all these doubts just start.
This is harder than I thought.
Yeah.
And wow, I don't know if I want to continue to do this. And so there's a valley of despair. But if you persevere, which I think every great accomplishment in life requires some of this, that you persevere through that and you will get to the other side. And then it's all and more than what you thought as far as how it was going to be. And that's just a wonderful, and I'll say that it's weird because we're in this society now where people are considering socialism and the government should be your employer and the government should be everything to you. And, and supposedly it's, it's something that America thinks is good, I guess, or enough people do. And I just look at that and I go, and then you hear what the government, well, not always the government, but those that support big government will, they'll look at someone as a business owner and say, you're getting rich off the backs of the little guy.
Right.
We got to come in and save and correct that. And I think there's an area of caution that we need to have, because that's an easy thing to swallow. That's an easy thing to point at, like Walmart, that's uber capitalism. And it's just no one, the Walton family shouldn't make as much money as they do. And whatever, point the finger at that. And there are things that that a business owner has to do and go through to get to that other side. And so many of them never do. And that's why so many people never attempt.
Yeah.
And so, it's easy to just look at that and say, well, you're just getting rich off of, people doing a bunch of work for you, but they don't understand. I had a job offer from pharma a year and a half into this when I'm just going, is this ever going to work? Like, I'm not making money.
Right.
And is this going to work? And I had an old manager who called me up and he said, Andy, how's the business? And we talked about it. And he goes, Andy, I don't want to hire somebody in Spokane. I want to hire you, even if it's half. Even if I know that if you only gave me half of your effort and you continue to work on the business, that is what I would want, rather than going with somebody I don't even know in Spokane to launch this drug. And so they flew me out to Chicago, and I spent a couple days there, went through the interview process. And this is why I'm running the business, and all the questions, even the human resources interviews me, and they're like, how are you going to run a business and fulfill this job? And I'm like, I'm committed to this, and I've got good people in my office, and I can. And my manager's on the side just saying, Andy, I'm not going to ask you to give, it's a full-time career, right? It's a full-time job, but because I'm not expecting you to give full-time service to this. He's not telling HR that, but
right.
But there was a job offer that came, and luckily, that's where I was at though. Luckily, the drug never got approved. It's kind of funny.
But this was before your experience with your wife.
Yeah.
So you had gone through this.
And I thought this might be a solution.
And they're dangling a bag of cash
he just
in
said,
front of you.
I want you, Andy, and I'll take you half time.
Yeah.
They sent the whole package as far as the offer with the salary and pick out your car, and it was all going to go down. And actually, I'll just say, luckily the drug never got launched, because I don't know how that would have worked out. It would just distracted. It would just delayed the business from doing what it needed to do.
Yeah.
It just would have distracted and delayed me from it. But it would have solved this incredible pressure that I had to provide for my family, that it was not working out at that point.
That's a great twist in the story.
Yeah.
You're feeling the pinch because you've been doing this thing for a while. You're feeling a little bit cash strapped, and here comes the guy with the bag saying, "Hey, here's your exit strategy, or here's a way to solve this short-term problem. This cash flow problem." And but you didn't decide not to take it. The drug never got approved, and so the job didn't actually happen.
As I was sitting there thinking, I'm gonna do this part time, like him and I were agreeing upon, and I knew the call points, and I knew that I already had relationships in these offices, and I kind of I know how to do this.
But telling the story now, looking back, 7 years on this deal, you're screaming at yourself. The 7 years ago self going, don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh, my Pam did not want me to do it. My wife did not. She's like, no, you just got to hold the course. You guys got to keep doing this. And I'm just like, honey, I can't sleep at night because I don't know how we're going to, come up with enough income to survive.
But so. She was just firm. She was like,
no.
You keep doing this.
She's gonna let me do what I want to do.
Of course.
So she knew I was going to Chicago and I was going to interview for this.
But her unrelenting faith in your success running this in-home care facility was a huge part of your getting through the other side on this deal.
Yeah. So I was tempted, obviously. I'm like, if I always would say this at the start of opening this business. For the first 2 to 3 years, we were profitable if we just took what my income needs were out of it.
Right.
And there's I don't know. I don't have an MBA. I didn't sign up with a franchise to tell me all the details of how to run a business. I kind of just jumped into this, and I knew how to market. I knew how to get the word out, and I figured I would learn how to do the bookkeeping and payroll and just on and on. I just learned how to do all these things as they came, and I did.
Yeah.
But there were things like running the business at a loss, killed me. Like that's failure, right? But really, it's not that big of a deal. But I didn't know that. I just thought that's failure.
Yeah.
If we run it at a loss, and the first year we're at a loss, second year we're at a loss. But then you hear, well, Amazon ran at a loss for a number of years.
Yep.
But those things bothered me. Like they really bothered me. Like, well, there's going to be this report card of this business at a loss that I'll never get away from, and I just felt like, wow, I'm failing, that's the psyche that I was experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, I was the president of the student healthcare board in college,
Yeah.
and now I have a business that is in the red year over year.
Yep.
So by the third year, were you in the black?
Yep.
That was your,
that was our
you got in the
breakthrough,
black.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Man, I love your story. See, like I told you, this is why you're one of my heroes. And there's a lot of details that I've never heard, obviously, about your story that you've shared. But that unrelenting faith in, that experience, and then that, would you call that the low cycle? Is that what you call it?
Valley of despair.
The valley of despair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did that come from? Is that a book you read, or
No? There's a
training you did,
presentation that I was in a business meeting, and somebody brought it up about the cycle of success, and I looked at it. I'm like, dang, I can chart the year and the month and everything along this cycle of success.
This is my life. This is how it worked.
Exactly. But I look back and it applies to a lot of things in our lives, that especially the things that are meaningful and require a lot of us.
Yeah.
That it's just not going to be glorious. And today, people see me, my friends, and they're just thinking, you get to play golf every day of the week, and you got this great life, or whatever. And it's so much nicer now, even though I still have pressures and challenges and all that, not to worry about how I'm going to provide for my home.
Yeah.
To be at that point is so rewarding. And then beyond that, you start to realize the independence you have, the ability to take care of other people. Like I had an employee who, she's a caregiver. We love her. She's a heavy lifter, just works a lot for us and willing to pick up shifts and solve problems for us. And she came in to resign last week. and because she wanted to go to a facility. Mm-hmm. And our caregivers, it's tough because if you're in the caregiving world, you will have a job the rest of your life anywhere on any street in USA because there's not enough of them.
Yep. Everybody that's doing in-home care is hiring all the time, like you are.
And same thing with assisted living facilities and nursing homes and hospitals. And everybody that needs that worker has a shingle up for hire.
Yep.
And so she sees a job that's above what she's doing now, because it'd be a scheduling position at a facility, and it comes with different benefits and things, and she's just like, I want to do that. Plus the schedule is going to be nicer, compact, beautiful Monday through Friday schedule.
Yep.
Well, no, we don't want to lose this individual, and so I sat down with her and we had a tearful conversation, and she had some challenges financially in her world and different things going on, and I just created a position for her that I knew was going to keep her with us in our office. And so she started on Friday. Her issues were last Wednesday. We started on Friday in a new position. She still had a lot of hours to cover for the clients that she saw. And now she's doing full time in our office. And so today is the second day, right? It's Tuesday, or third day, I guess, of her of her new position.
Yeah.
And the whole office has just brightened because she's just wonderful to work with. And the ability to just give her a significant raise, to give her a position that fulfilled her, that she wanted, that she was going to find somewhere else, and then also to throw some extra things in there to help her with some other stuff that was going on. It's just, that's part of the fulfillment of what I can do that I wasn't able to do in my other.
Did you know prior to her coming and talking to you that this was her internal struggle? Did you know?
I had no idea. In fact, I wouldn't even have seen her, but because she just talks with the care coordinators that she works with, and they came in and go, Andy, she wants to leave. Tells me who it is,
And you're totally blown away.
I'm like, what? We can't lose her.
She's like one of our best employees.
She's fantastic. She's been employee of the month more than once, and so I call her up. I say, and she'd already left the office. Put in her 2-week notice.
Yeah.
And so I call her up and say, hey, let's get together and meet and come back to my office. So she did, and she didn't even want to tell the other position that she had said yes to, that she was perplexed on, well, I can't really tell them no, so we had to discuss a lot of her problems and challenges to get her to see that she's going to be better off being here, and we'll take care of her. And so, but the point I'm making in that story, even though it's just very current, and it's happened many times. 2 months ago, I had an employee that had a car issue, and she just couldn't afford to get her car fixed. And so I just told her that I'm gonna put $1,000 in your next paycheck if you will get that car fixed.
Yeah.
But those kinds of things that that I want to be able to do, that really are fulfilling.
Yeah.
Beyond the great care that we provide,
Yeah.
and that's really the most fulfilling, is to sit down with the family. I sat down with a family up in Chattaroy yesterday, that a husband and a wife, where they gotta always be careful. I probably should have said Chattaroy. It's like giving out too much detailed information.
You just violated all the HIPAA laws.
But anyway, this couple, he's got Parkinson's, and he had a fantastic career. I'm not going to tell you what it was because I just don't want to get too much detail involved here. But he had a great career, adventurous. He did some things in the Peace Corps when he was young, and I got to chat with him about all this stuff. And now he can't walk. He's in a wheelchair. He needs someone to help feed him. His wife's been doing this all the time. He's young. He's like 67.
Oh, my goodness.
He's young, and he's just, their hopes and dreams that they had were kind of taken from them. Well, anyway, she is burnt out
because
she's working full time from her home
and taking care of him.
And taking care of him, and
she's working 2 full-time jobs essentially. Yeah,
and so she just needs a break. She needs help, and he needs companionship. He needs somebody that he can.
Yeah,
and so we've got a great caregiver that lives close to them. It's a male caregiver. So it's just a perfect setting for him. And it just was so fulfilling to look at their case and their situation and say, look at here's what we can do, and let's see how this helps you out.
I love this part of your story because I think sometimes we're so focused in on, is this going to work for me? I keep coming back to this experience with you and your wife, praying and asking, for guidance and feeling the confirmation that it was good for you, which it was and has been and will continue to be. But God sees the whole picture. What you were totally honed in on was how am I going to keep my kids in college? How am I going to feed my family, pay my mortgage, whatever else is on the table? And what God saw was, Andy, I got all that stuff covered. There's all this other stuff that I need somebody to do. And you're the guy that's got to do that, because there's a gal whose car is going to break down and I need somebody to fix it because she's got no way to do it. And I've got all these people that I need you to help. And so I love that is part of your philosophy, in this, kind of answering other people's prayers essentially is what you're in the business of doing.
Well, I love that you picked that up. I can tell you that in our family prayers for a good 2 years, the family as a whole was asking Heavenly Father to bless that the business would be successful, that it would grow, that it would do the things it needed to do.
Yeah.
And that was just every single prayer that our family offered. Didn't matter if it was the youngest child to the oldest.
Oh, just pleading.
Everybody was doing it. And I even have one of my sons who, when I told the family, look, I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to open this business, and this is what the business is, and this is what it's going to be called, and this is what we're going to do, but it's going to be different. He was younger. He was my third child, and my fourth child, actually, third boy.
How many do you have?
I've got five.
Five, okay.
And he took it the hardest. Like, he looked at my challenge, and he didn't take it the hardest because he thought, like, well, I'm not going to have new jeans or whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to have the money.
Be terrible.
Yeah.
I'm going to candy cane.
And he just took like, wow, this is going to be hard for dad, hard for the family. So his faithfulness, you could always see in his prayers.
Yeah. Every
time. And he's a young adult now. He's 19. And to hear him talk about those days, he's like, Dad, he just took things harder than others. He really was deeper thinking about things.
He's kind of your worrier, maybe.
He's a little bit of a worrier.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But, it was so great to transition the family and say, look we're 2 years into this. We need to be thanking God now.
Yeah.
Because it's been a blessing.
Yeah.
We need to be thanking him every day.
Yeah.
And we continue to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there is a thing that I could probably share since we've brought enough faith into this conversation.
Please, absolutely.
I have a blessing, and you know what it's called. It's called a patriarchal blessing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I want to take a lot of time to explain what that is, but it's a blessing that tells me that I feel came from God to me, that gives me some idea of the direction my life can go if I'm faithful and so in this blessing, and I have it in print copy, it says that I will have times where I will be a community influencer leader. I forget exactly how it went that way. And that always was I always wondered what that meant. Like, am I supposed to get into politics? And I don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
And I feel that this position with this career and this job it's fulfilling that blessing that came to me.
Yeah.
In many ways, and I feel that I need to do that.
Yeah.
And I've served on boards where I've been local boards of senior centers and other senior related not-for-profit groups that do great things in our community. And I've been on boards for ever since I almost got into the business. I've been on boards.
Yeah.
Today I'm on a board as the vice president of the Washington Association of Home Care Agencies.
Awesome.
And I've served at the state level for a number of years. And so I know that I'm doing some things that I feel like the Lord wanted me to be able to do and I should be doing. And that's part of this career.
Yeah. And you, I always go back to the way we feel, you felt like there was more that you wanted to do, when you were doing pharmaceutical sales. And for a long time, that was great and fulfilling and set the table for what the next chapter of your life was going to be. And this whole concept that you, in your 40s, you were able to take that, shift gears, go a completely different direction, and here you are today, with great fulfillment and, great impact on the community and family and employees. And I mean, this story of you creating a position for an employee who was, talking about leaving is such a great example of kind of this whole journey in this service-based business that, that you've chosen to run and be in. It's really awesome. Your story's awesome.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
This has been a really, really good interview. So I want to keep this going because the most important question is this one. You are wearing some Smartwool socks. Smartwool makes great socks.
Amen.
So what's your philosophy here with socks?
Well, I like athletic socks that give some support, and I like these Smartwool because of the time of year that we're in right now, and they add some warmth. But it's funny. I had this career, in the pharma world where I wore a tie and a shirt, a button-up shirt for years and years and years, and occasionally when I didn't have to worry about managers, I'd get a little more casual. But since I opened this business, I am completely casual. Like this is the first button shirt I wore.
You look a little casual today. I guess I told you you're going to be on camera. So
this is the first button down shirt I wore in I don't know how long time. Usually in the wintertime I'll wear a little more button down type stuff.
Sure.
But I as well that change in my dress and feel for things is probably just age, right? You know, we all want a loose belt. We want suspenders so we can let our gut fly out or whatever. But it applies to my shoes. Like I buy the comfortable spikeless golf shoes with memory foam, beds in them, and I've totally gone casual. And my wife, she has a tough time with that because I just want to be comfortable, and so that applies to my socks.
Oh yeah.
And there are socks that have meaning for whatever reason, they're given to you by somebody, but I'm all about comfort these days.
Yeah,
it's about the comfort.
Well, you don't get much more comfortable than Smartwool, no doubt about it. They make a great sock. So I wore these today because, first of all, they're Stance socks. I don't know if you have ever worn a pair of Stance socks, but
No,
they're one of
they're
one of my favorite brands. They're really durable. They're super comfortable. But as I was looking through my sock assortment, I got these because they reminded me of my grandma's couch.
Oh, there you go. I get it. I can see it.
They're kind of a green, pattern, and they kind of have that stripe, like your grandma's old couch had. And as I was thinking about the seniors, that you take care of, you see a lot of grandma's couches.
I do. I sit on them. I sit on them all the time.
So that's why I wore the green grandma couch socks today.
Good for you.
Well, Andy, I really, really appreciate you joining me today and doing this interview. I think a lot of people are going to find your story really inspiring. And if you want to look up Andy, the name of his business is Love in Home Senior Care in Spokane, Washington. You can connect with him there or on LinkedIn. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Awesome. Really appreciate you coming by.
Well, thank you for the time, Kelly.
Yeah.
This was fun.
You
I
bet.
enjoyed it.
That wraps up this episode of the Socks and Soul podcast. We sure hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments or connect with us on Facebook. We'll see you next time. The Socks and Soul podcast is a production of Ditto Film Media. If you enjoy this content, be sure to give it a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Join the conversation on Facebook at Socks and Soul Podcast.